Shalom, family. Thank you so much for joining us for our weekly news update. And this is our weekly get together. Every single week, we gather on this night to go over the headlines and stay at the 10,000 foot view. That's the way we like to say it around here. We like to be informed without being overwhelmed. So, again, thank you for joining us and for being a part of this amazing family that is gathering each week. We're certainly grateful you're here. Do share and like. We appreciate it when you do that. It's always nice when you folks help us out to connect up with other brothers and sisters who are awakening in this hour. What a great moment to witness the move of the Ruach as more and more people are awakening to the truth that sets men free. And many of them are zooming ahead. I tell you what, it's kind of exciting to see some of these that are coming in now, that are awakening now, right? That are excited right now. And they're just zooming ahead. They're just getting going. And I think that's the benefit of having you all that have gone before, the remnant that went before them. You made it so much easier for them to get through some of the things that you had a hard time getting through. Remember that. So continue to blaze that trail. Continue to be the courageous that are out in front, because there are people behind you who are picking up what you're putting down. So just remember that out there. And again, I want to remind everybody that we do have this amazing website at remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com. And at the very top of the banner, you always find this banner that will take you to our latest weekly news update. So this will bring you right here tonight. Obviously, we're here tonight getting together. And of course, we have our top headline, our top story. And we always have the survival guides and things that are available for people, because disasters don't seem to stop. And we have this search bar for those that are keeping track of some of the things that are happening. And some of you are doing that. I know a lot of you are very much pattern watchers, and you're watching scripture be fulfilled. You're watching different things and keeping an eye on and how frequently things are reported in the news and so forth. Now, again, doesn't mean it's not. You got to be careful with this, because the news may not report everything that is happening. So we have to do our own research, but it does present a new tool. So thank you again to those of you who continue to be a part of this amazing house and stand with us in this hour. You know, we need all the support we can get. Thank you again to those that find that button. Where is it? Over here. Oh, there you go. You can scan that and support and encourage us in this work, because this is a labor of love. So those of you that do that, we really, really appreciate it. It very much humbles us every time you do that. Just by the way, just so you know, it's very humbling. It's but we're reminded to put it up there because people forget, and then they kind of chastise us. Hey, put that up there, because we forget about that. And if you put it up there, we'll remember and we'll participate. So thank you to those of you who do. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, I tell you, some of the things that are happening right now, they're very, very challenging to read. Some of this is all theatrics, by the way. So before we get too far into the news tonight, just remember that we are watching theater. Okay. So a lot of this is just play acted. It's been put out there for the sake of the consumption of the masses. But nevertheless, Russia is warning Trump that he would trigger the end of the world if he captured Greenland. So a lot of stakes are coming in concerning this Greenland conflict. How many of you are now hearing more and more about Greenland in the news? And it's slowly taking over more and more of our dialogue and our conversation. And Russia is warning Donald Trump that if he would trigger what they call the end of the world if he snatches Greenland as tensions rise between Russia and the West. One Russian official has warned that all-out war could break out if Trump plans to take over Greenland actually goes through. So there are very much some heated words going back and forth, and tensions between Russia and the West could be about to boil over if Trump takes up his plan, according to some. So again, this is meant to continue to keep us on a state of anxiety. So again, remember that a lot of this is manipulated with that intention. A top Russian official has warned at the end of the world if Donald Trump managed to secure Greenland for the U.S. It comes as tensions are continuing to rise between Washington and Copenhagen over the future of the island. And again, there are a lot of discussions now going on about this. This is now dominating the news, which is kind of obfuscating some of the other things that are going on. Now, Russia is making a different kind of play going on in Europe. So this is now gonna shift as discussions of peace coming in. But now they're still floating stories again from the right. So interesting how the right left wings are different wings of the same bird, right? So you got to be careful with this monster called politics. But nevertheless, now you're hearing from the right that Russia is plotting a major strike on Europe's nuclear power plant lines, sources are telling. And this, of course, makes absolutely no strategic sense whatsoever. Russia has already won and winning. That would be foolish. They would lose a lot of points that they already got. So the nuclear power plant and critical substations are reportedly to be targeted as part of a broader pressure strategy. Well, again, that may be true as part of a normal strike strategy, but as far as them actually executing something like that, I think they'd have to be highly provoked. Russia is preparing to target, according to this report, Europe's biggest nuclear power plants and power lines in a move that could unfold within days, according to a source familiar with the matter. Notice that we don't know the source, nor can we vet it. And so again, this is part of the theatrics that we have to be careful with, because this is where the anxiety comes from when you start seeing things like this. And then, of course, news commentators will run with it as if it's vetted, as if it's true. We've already seen so many hoaxes that were run with that were not vetted, right? So this starts to become kind of funny. Now, this is more what you can expect to be more likely to be true, that they're actually planning on putting together some kind of peace, new United Nations type of effort. It seems to be going on. This is very, very interesting, especially for Bible scripture watchers and so forth. A lot of people are watching these events, going, "What does this mean? What does this mean?" So it's very interesting. But Putin was invited to join Trump's Board of Peace, according to the Kremlin. So the Board of Peace has been created by U.S. President Donald Trump to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza. Okay, so this is quietly going on at the same time that the loud rhetoric is going on over Greenland. So this is very interesting to me. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Monday that Moscow would be studying the details of the proposal. Trump administration reportedly wants the nations to pay $1 billion to remain on the board in perpetuity. So again, getting it kind of kickstarted with funding. So they're floating the idea of creating a board of peace, and that if you want to be in, you got to pony up. Okay, you got to have skin in the game, which to a large degree makes sense. And you can be part of the board of peace. Let's go ahead and put that over here. Right, let's go ahead and slide that over here. So that's news stuck out there. Let's forget about that. Let's go back on over to Greenland now. Come on now, everybody. Get on over to Greenland now. Troops from Europe deploy to Greenland in rapid 2-day mission as Trump eyes U.S. takeover. See the loudness over here? Are you seeing the loudness over here? I just want you guys to see. I'm just showing it to you the way I look at it. Like, you guys are awful loud over here and awful quiet over here. Okay. Germany sends 13 personnel. 13, a whole 13, huh? And France is sending 15. Just so y'all know, don't be coming to Greenland because we sent 28. Don't even. You see how they blew this up? Trump from several years. Troops. Sounds doesn't it sound like you're going to be hearing, like troops, meaning thousands upon thousands of battalions, right? Coming in. It's basically a baker's dozen. Troops from several European countries deployed. They deployed. They didn't even have to catch military aircraft. They didn't even have enough to fill up military aircraft. They probably flew commercial. Sorry, it's just this theater gets so ridiculous sometimes. Troops from several European countries deployed to Greenland are on the ground there Thursday for a quick 2-day mission to bolster the territory's defenses. All 13 of them. I'm sorry, folks. That's utterly laughable. I'm telling you, this stuff is laughable. And the thing is that people, of course, they know this, and we all know this too, right? People just read headlines. They don't even read the story. So they don't even dig into what's really being reported at all. They just kind of keep going. And what's sad about it is it's easy to manipulate the masses, right? So they're all like, oh my gosh, did you hear? Did you read it? No, I didn't read it, but I heard. Oh, you read a headline. You read a headline. Be careful reading headlines. The geopolitical tensions have spread to the Arctic. Way over here, guys. Look over here. Nothing to see over here. Look over here. Okay. And so when I see this many stories on the same topic, on the same thing, okay, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. I get it. NATO plans for fighter jet dogfights over Greenland. That's Kremlin issues extraordinary statement. So the NATO, well, what they're going to do is they're going to do some dogfighting right over Greenland, just to practice. I guess they got to fight the Americans, I guess, who invented dogfighting, who are like Top Guns and stuff, right? So, right. NATO is weighing out sending fighters to Greenland as European allies continue to bolster the Danish island's defenses. Moscow has condemned Donald Trump's rhetoric on seizing the territory while also blasting Western claims that Russia and China pose a threat to the mineral-rich island. Okay, so I don't think anybody has any question that the reason why there's such interest in Greenland is because of its rare earth minerals. So you see right here this wealth of minerals that is, of course, detailed here by the U.S. Sun, and it shows titanium, rare earths, diamonds, copper, gold, tungsten, graphite, iron ore, zinc, and nickel. And going into this next season, what we're going to see is, of course, a lot of emphasis on manufacturing, and rare earth minerals, of course, is an area that China kind of has the world by the short and curlies, if you know what I mean, right? And so China is not playing nice, and that's caused a lot of problems around the world. So now there's like a major push to find rare earth minerals everywhere. And so this is causing these decisions made by a board of some Chinese officials. Well, that's now changing the entire Earth's geopolitical structure because they made a decision to restrict rare earth minerals coming out of China. So what China is doing is forcing the growth of other industries by doing what they're doing. They're forcing it by their control mechanism. They're going to get away with that in the short term. In the long term, they're going to end up with a lot more competition in the rare earth mineral business. And the United States looks like they're setting up to be their number one competitor in rare earth minerals. So stay tuned, folks, because this isn't going to go away. I believe he's serious when he says we have to acquire Greenland. U.S. officials are saying that the Greenland action could come within weeks or months. So this is being reported by USA Today. And again, adding a lot of validity and a lot of credibility to this. So this is starting to get, the stakes are starting to go up a little bit, right? And we're seeing more and more discussion. Excuse me about that. Sorry about that, guys. We're seeing more and more discussion about actual kinetic action. And guys, one thing we've learned during these reports doing this is that it's the blustery, it's the conversation that precedes actual action. And getting back to this report here, the U.S. NATO allies, Germany and France, begin to send military personnel to Greenland. So there's a divide going on right within NATO itself, which is not a new thing, but nevertheless gotten to a new level. President Donald Trump's desire to annex Greenland will not be thwarted, and there could be meaningful U.S. action related to the Arctic island within weeks or months, according to a senior administration official. That's the view of Thomas Dans, Trump's Arctic commissioner. He's regarded as one of the main proponents of the president's interest in Greenland. So basically saying we will not be thwarted, we will not lose, we will conquer. If we have to, we will send in the military. So again, this is starting to get interesting. And so Trump is pushing or escalating the GOP lawmakers now move to make in America's 51st state. And this, again, by brutal acquisition. This is not even asking the people of Greenland. It's just telling them. And I think what it is that the my suspicion is that Europe is in debt and doesn't know how to pay the debt. First on Fox, a House Republican is pushing for Greenland to become the country's 51st state as President Donald Trump publicly pushes for the Danish territory to come under U.S. rule. And we did touch on this before, but I do believe that there is a major shift going on here in the world. And again, folks, the very fact that they're not even going to ask, they're not even going to pursue this, tells you that there's a different situation at hand. Now, I'd love your thoughts, guys, because it's one of those, we're speculating here, right? We're sort of off the record. But it seems to me that something more is going on here. If you remember the first term of Donald Trump, one of the things that he continued to say about NATO was that they had not paid their fair share of support to the U.S. military for all the years of defense that the U.S. military had provided. And so the United States was, of course, represented by its president, saying, it's time for you to pony up. It's time for you to pay up. You guys remember that? This was like 2017 to 2020. It was a lot of rhetoric going back to NATO and back to Denmark about the fact that we're protecting you and you're doing nothing about it. You're not even helping to offset the costs. So does it seem odd to you guys that when he gets in there, he's like, now, about that bill I talked to you guys about last time that you still haven't paid, if you guys don't want to pony up a check and you don't want to pay the tariffs, you guys catching what's going on? This is like naked repo. He's like repoing. He's like, fine, and I'm not going to protect. Not only am we not going to protect, but we're going to take this. Now, it's a super hardcore gangster move. But you don't get that kind of moxie without feeling like you have high ground. That's my point. That level of moxie, that level of I'm just going to do this, there's reasons for that. You have to feel like, and just think about you as a person, you have to feel like you're really justified to have that much energy, especially in the public, willing to take wind in your face to say, nope, we're going to go do this. There's a reason for that, and it's much more than what's being reported, right? So Greenland was probably something that was negotiated as part of a deal, and it looks to me like it wasn't honored. The deal wasn't honored, and so now they're going to come to blows. So this is going to continue to get worse, I believe, before it gets better. And of course, the threats continue. So Trump is saying he's going to punish countries with tariffs if they don't back the U.S. controlling Greenland. So he's saying, I'm going to get mine one way or t'other. That's basically the language you're hearing there. He's saying, I'm going to get paid one way or the other. U.S. President Donald Trump suggests Friday that he may punish countries with tariffs if they don't back the U.S. controlling Greenland. A message that came as a bipartisan congressional delegation sought to lower tensions in the Danish capital. Trump, for months, has insisted the U.S. should control the Greenland and semi-autonomous territory of NATO ally Denmark, and said earlier this week that anything less than the Arctic island being in U.S. hands would be unacceptable. So does that sound like language of somebody that is trying to diplomatically acquire something or talk the people into it? No, that sounds like something that was lost in a poker game. That's what I'm hearing, guys. I'm just giving you sounds to me like it was lost in a poker game, and he wants to collect on the bet. And they're like, no, we were just kidding, man. Greenland, we were just kidding about Greenland. Now you can't really try and grab it. Now, come on, man. And they're like, he's like, no, that was our deal. It's there's something more to this than what we've been told because of the way that he's behaving. It's just too entitled. It's too over the top. And he continues to make statements that, again, either he's completely lost it, which is possible. So he is a little cuckoo, folks. Let's be honest. But on top of that, it looks to me like he was jilted in some way because this is actions and the behavior of a offended person. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Somebody offended. Trump's tariffs live update. Trump links Greenland threat to Nobel Peace Prize snub. Oh, so there's another part of he's still feeling very offended over the Nobel Peace Prize. EU discusses 108 billion in retaliatory tariffs. And President Trump has linked his rationale for wanting to purchase Greenland with the fact that he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. So that also may be an unsettling factor. That's very disturbing if that's true. According to a letter to the U.S. president sent to the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store, and consider your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace. So in other words, you guys disrespected me. I was thinking of peace for you, and then you blew me off. No problem. I stopped 8 wars. Do you see how he feels? So he's offended. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And he's being very specific about the countries that he's coming for. So countries that, again, the U.S. defended, and he feels that they owe a little bit of money to the United States, and the United States is struggling, and they're acting like, hey, it's not our problem. And he's like, oh, it's not your problem? Oh, it's not your problem. Well, Trump says 8 European countries will be charged a 10% tariff for opposing U.S. control of Greenland. So he's going ahead with his plan. So West Palm Beach, Florida, reporting this just the other day, President Donald Trump said Saturday that he would charge a 10% import tax starting in February on goods from 8 European countries because of their opposition to America's control of Greenland, setting up a potential dangerous test of U.S. partnership in Europe. So he's saying essentially, I'm going to get paid one way or the other. Yeah, I'm taking my ball and I'm going to go home. No, he's saying I'm going to get paid. Y'all going to pay me. You can hear it in his voice. You can hear it in his actions. He feels very entitled. Same with Venezuela. Felt very entitled. Look, he sounded like a very upset about it. Like, we've been robbed and we're going to go get our money. So I think a lot of times what we don't hear as the public are the deals that are made, and the backroom deals, and the agreements and the arrangements, right? And so when those arrangements fall through, in the public, they try to pretend nothing happened. But in the private, you and I both know that they made these promises and what have you. Now, of course, the people in Denmark, well, they have an opinion as well. And so they're all being told they got to wake up. You must all wake up. Thousands in Denmark show up to protest Trump's demand for Greenland. So in Copenhagen, demonstrators chanted, "Greenland is not for sale," and displayed signs, slogans, no means no, and hands off Greenland, and so forth and so on. So thousands across Denmark and Greenland have been defiant against Donald Trump. And that's one of the main reasons why this looks very suspicious, because it's a foolish tactic. You're literally poking people in the chest. And you got to know that they're going to react that way. I mean, you got to know that. Anybody would tell you that, well, that's just going to upset them all. So what are you doing it for? It doesn't make any sense, does it? But nevertheless, he's continuing to double down on this. So Trump's tariff threat over Greenland risks dangerous downward spiral, warns a NATO member as it happened. A leader of Denmark, Finland, France, all these leaders, and of course the UK issued a joint statement ahead of a EU ambassadors meeting going on where? In Davos, of course. Of course, they're going to meet in Davos. And again, you guys can take a look at that on remnantwatch.com. And so what I believe this is a smokescreen, right? So there's other things happening in the earth, guys. And I think that a lot of this attention has its effect in other areas by not allowing attention and international pressure on other things. And so one of those things is this slipped in reality. Trump wants nations to pay $1 billion to stay on the peace board. And the peace board, of course, has to do with Gaza. The Trump administration is asking countries that want a permanent spot on his new board of peace to contribute at least $1 billion, according to a draft charter for the proposed group seen by Bloomberg. So I would imagine he's hoping to get all the countries he can in there so that would fund the rebuilding of Gaza. That makes a lot of sense, right? So basically, each member state shall serve a term of no more than 3 years from this charter entry into force, subject to renewal by the chairman. 3-year membership shall not apply to member states that contribute more than $1 billion in cash funds to the Board of Peace within the first year of the charter's entry into force. So those that step in with some loot will have a permanent seat. So this is an invitation to the bigger countries to get on board. And then if they don't get on board because they don't either have the money or don't want to pay the money, then in the future, they will not be allowed to speak into this issue. So this is a very clever way of making a much smaller group that have now a, quote, vested interest in the region. So you will no longer have a seat at the table if you don't bring the case. You seeing this, guys? Clever. Very clever. You don't get a seat at say, we passed the hat. You said no, remember? You remember Madagascar. You didn't want nothing to do with this, right? Oh, now you want to tell us how to run it? No, sorry, Madagascar. You don't get involved. Sorry, South or whoever you are, right? So Indonesia, whoever you are. Okay, so whatever country doesn't pony up doesn't get to participate. Well, that closes out a lot of nations that don't have the funds. And secondly, now their voice will no longer be heard. So you're changing the United Nations right there. Instead of having all these countries having a voice, now you're cutting it down to just those who ponied up and who are, quote, invested. Clever. Very, very clever. So in the meantime, of course, in the region, you got U.S. strikes eliminating al-Qaeda operatives connected to ISIS in an ambush that killed 3 Americans in Syria. So again, we're still continuing to see more and more of these attacks. This was since our last report, guys. So this was since the last report we reported this going on. U.S. CENTCOM announced Saturday a leader affiliate with al-Qaeda had direct ties to ISIS terrorists responsible for killing two U.S. service members. An American interpreter, December 13th, were killed in a U.S. strike on northwest Syria on Friday. So they're not done. They're continuing to bring down more judgment upon those who were bringing death to the U.S. soldiers. So again, it's a tit for tat. It's a very petty fight. These are things that go on forever. We saw this all through our adult lives in the United States. We've seen petty conflicts going on, whether it was in South America or other parts of the world, continues to this day. Of course, the one that we were all watching for a long time, finally seeing some winding up, is the Ukraine-Russia war. Of course, the latest, Zelensky is warns Putin forces planning a large-scale attack in the coming days. But again, I think that there's a lot of speculation about whether or not this is true. So again, Ukraine's suggesting that Putin is not serious about ending the war and that he's going to attack the power grids and so forth. Europe is starting to turn toward Russia. So this is the part that I don't buy, because what I'm seeing is the reality. I just saw a report that Germany is now lamenting that they stopped buying Russian oil because it literally pushed all their manufacturing into Hungary. And Hungary, of course, has no problem buying Russian oil. So the manufacturing left isn't coming back. And it really ruined their economy. And again, a decision made by bureaucrats that had real repercussions on the ground. So Europe's turning toward Russia, not away. They're turning toward them. They're actually saying things like, we need to now figure out ways to get along. They're changing their rhetoric, and they have to, because their society won't survive, and America can't come to their rescue, nor do they want them to. They're starting to realize that maybe America isn't the ally they thought they were. So in the meantime, and they're also seeing that America can just all of a sudden call for regime change, right? And so look at this. You know that all these leaders are all going, man, I could be next. They could just decide that I'm a bad guy next week, right? Trump calls for regime change in Iran, blasts leaders as sick, and it's time. He gets to decide that it's time. You get that? That's very dictatorial, scary stuff, folks. President Trump on Saturday said it's time to look for new leadership in Iran after the nation's leader lashed out at the president for supporting anti-government protests and blamed the U.S. for the regime's deadly crackdown. In an interview with Politico, Trump doubled down on his criticism of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Tehran's use of violence to govern the Middle Eastern country. He's right. You can't use violence to govern your own people, no matter what anybody outside your country is doing. What he is guilty of as the leader of his country is the complete destruction of the country and the use of violence at levels never seen before, the president told the outlet. In order to keep the country functioning, even though that function is very low, the leadership should focus on running his country properly, like I do with the United States, and not killing people by the thousands in order to keep control. So again, demonstrating and are trying to demonstrate a superiority in the way in which governance is done. And that's probably a better direction to go in terms of argument. Nevertheless, it continues to fall short and stoke up more consternation in the nations, guys. What do you guys think? I think it's making things worse. I think his antagonistic, bravado, chest beating mannerisms, his machismo mannerisms, are counterproductive. What's your thoughts? Please give me your thoughts in the comments, because again, I it's not a personal dig. I'm not trying. I'm just thinking in terms of effectiveness. It looks to me like it's probably not going to work. Now, speaking of Iran, there is of course the son of Iranian Shah. And the Shahs used to run Iran before the Ayatollahs took over in the late 70s. So the son of Iranian Shah courts Trump and calls for surgical strikes. So he's asking for the same strikes that were happening in Syria to happen in Iran. And Rez Pahlavi, the exiled prince, told Washington press conference that he had a comprehensive plan for the collapse of the regime. And the son of the former Shah of Iran called for surgical strikes to hasten the fall of the regime as he asserted his right to lead a transition to democracy. So there are those that are very much on board with wanting a military strike in Iran, wanting to see kinetic action. I think that's a very dangerous thing to promote and a very, very dangerous thing to do. And of course, they're going to continue to say things like this because they want to provoke a fight. So we got to make this top news. We got to make sure everybody knows this was said. Got to say this real loud. Okay. Top Iranian general threatens to cut off Trump's hands over potential military strikes. What? This was news? We had to put this headline up here? You guys seeing this? Okay. Senior Revolutionary Guard General Moshe Razeh says Iran will abandon ceasefire talks if attacked. And, of course, one of Iran's most senior officials issued a direct threat against President Donald Trump Thursday while warning that U.S. military action would provoke retaliation against American forces across the Middle East, according to the Iranian media reports. And, of course, that's the same thing we've heard before. It continues to be restoked. So we keep hearing the same story, rebaked, if you will, baked in. And what we're not hearing about, and this is the truth, is that there is a brutal crackdown going on the inside of Iran. And this is horrible. I reacted, and Mama will tell you, I reacted when I heard it was 34 people. When I read that it was 34 people that had died, I said, that's a lot of people dying in a protest. I was reacting at 34. Look at this, guys. This is ridiculous. This is like Gaza going on in Iran, man. It's crazy, these numbers. A new level of brutality. Iran doctors put death toll in a suppressed uprising at over 16,500. Network physicians say at least 330,000 injured. Wow, that's a lot of injured people, man. Ouch. 330,000 people were injured? That's a lot. The death toll and the suppression demonstrations in Iran is more than 16,500, according to a British Sunday report, citing an account put together by a network of Iranian doctors that far exceeds previous estimates. The doctor said that most of the dead were people under 30 and that at least 330,000 people were injured. Wow. Isn't that crazy? And what are we seeing? We're seeing a continuation of the same spirit of war. One of the things that we talked about, the spirit of war being loosed in the nations, right? And how that is, again, a prophetic thing. And again, it continues to happen. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time we see it. And now we're finding out the disturbing reason why Iran appears to have stopped slaughtering protesters. The ruthless slaughter of anti-government protests in Iran appears to have stopped, but only because residents are being held hostage in their homes by machine gun-wielding security forces that have flooded the streets, sources told the Post Thursday. So the way they're stopping the killing is they're stopping people from leaving their homes, period. That's the new tactic being used by Iran. And, if you can't congregate, you can't lawfully gather, then you can't protest. And so they didn't just shut down the public spaces They also shut down airspace. Foreign officials were warned against travel to Israel. NATAM alerts closes airspace. And UK Foreign Office issues travel advisory for Israel. So Iran is shutting down airspace. There's conversations going on over Israel again. Iran issued a notice early Wednesday, closing airspace to all flights. And again, we're going to continue to see more and more of this because of the peace plan, guys. You know, we got a peace plan going on. And of course, I believe that there were hostage situations and things going back and forth. You've got people in Iran. And so we saw a negotiation done in public. You may not have picked this up, but when Trump acknowledged that there was a halt to killings, and so he acknowledged this publicly, and then he made certain provisions the very next day. So Trump told Iran he's halted killings amid mounting pressure, and Trump announces he's been told executions in Iran have ended after thousands reported killed in crackdowns and protesters. So suddenly he's getting reports that's all over. It's all going to be done. That sounds a lot like a lot of coordinating, guys. It's a lot of back channel conversations and coordinating. Okay, so that's all I'm pointing this out for. I'm not going to read the article as if it's valid. I'm simply pointing out the fact that if you start to look at this, you start to see there's overlapping, and that means that there's coordinating. And so this is again manipulating both populations, and there seems to be a reason for it. We don't know all of it, but we'll keep an eye. And again, it's all part of a plan. We haven't all seen all the plan, but we know it's part of a plan. And then at the same time, the Iranian people are being told, keep protesting, help is on the way, the regime will pay a big price. Right? So they're pummeling them. They're pushing them forward. They're saying, go get them, guys. Get in the streets. Fight, fight, fight. Right? So they're pushing them forward at the same time that, of course, people are dying at record numbers. So this has really, really become a very, very challenging situation indeed. And Turkey, of course, is warning about problems erupting in the entire region as we come into this time period. And so bodies are piling up in the morgues. And so there are reports that are coming out of bodies that are piling up. And this is, of course, something that we do see in the scripture about time periods of great mourning and great sorrow. So again, information is trickling out of Iran on Tuesday, suggesting that a crackdown by authorities to end more than 2 weeks of widespread anti-government protests has likely been far more deadly than activists outside the country have reported. And with phone lines opening back up for calls from inside the Islamic Republic, two sources, including one inside Iran, told CBS News on Tuesday that at least 12,000 and possibly as many as 20,000 people have been killed. And when you have 330,000 people that are already injured, there's a high likelihood that you're going to see more deaths. So this is very, very challenging. Now, of course, that just continues the circumstances that we see here in the world. There now coming back to the United States a little bit, we're continuing to see more and more challenges going on here. Now, before we get too far, just to let you know, there was a battle group that was released. The Pentagon did move the carrier airstrike group towards the Middle East amid the Iran tensions. Now, I'm hoping that's just a precautionary measure. So again, because I think there's sufficient pressure going on the inside of Iran. But nevertheless, so you know that the Pentagon is moving a carrier strike group from the South China Sea to the U.S. Central Command Area of Responsibility, which includes the Middle East. So this is the direction that I once went from in 1984. So you come from South China Sea and you take up a PIRAS station right below in the Straits of Hormuz. So moving this strike carrier group, naval formation, creating centering around an aircraft carrier with a variety of other vessels, including at least one attack submarine, is expected to take about a week. And so they're moving into position. This is formidable. A battle group, which includes an aircraft carrier, is a game changer. It's a game changer level of firepower that now comes into your region and now presents a direct threat. So moving back to the United States, what we're seeing in the United States is devastation going on the interior of the country. So we're dying a death of 1,000 cuts. The economy is the number one thing. So A retail apocalypse is going on, which is gripping the country with more than 8,000 great American stores to close, and experts say the bloodbath will only get worse. So what you're watching is a digital transition, something I wrote about 20 years ago, folks, in Financial Dominion. I talked about the fact that you will have to move to a digital economy. There's no way around it. And if you try to avoid it, you will be pummeled. Well, that's what a lot of people are finding out. In just over 2 weeks in 2026, the big name retailers have already announced store closures, and things are only going to get worse, experts told the Daily Mail. The ongoing retail bloodbath saw Macy's announce last week it was going to close 14 unproductive stores across 12 states. And the luxury department store Saks Global filed for bankruptcy, marking one of the largest retail chains failures since the pandemic. And this comes after more than 8,000 chain retail store locations across multiple companies shut down in 2025. So the era of the mall is over. This time period that we all lived through, the mall era, has come to an end. And now, because of that, because of this economic shift that is occurring, the way in which we do things, the way in which we work is all shifting. And as a result of that shifting, there's much social unrest. So under the guise of it being one problem, like ICE, okay, or immigration, I believe that's a cover for being able to put your heavier forces in places you expect there to be heavier reaction to things that are going to be coming. So right now you're seeing a pushback in Minnesota. ICE agents are ordered not to retaliate against protesters or stop drivers in the street during a chaotic Minnesota operation. So a lot of things going on in Minnesota. Those of you guys paying attention to that. A Minnesota district judge ruled that immigration and customs enforcement agents cannot detain or tear gas peaceful protesters. And so this is now going to continue to be a battleground area. And how many know that this is, again, another theatrical thing going on? And so now what you saw was the White House respond directly, and Trump said that he would invoke the Insurrection Act, which is heavy-handed response, folks. All right, this is a very heavy-handed response. So this is drawing, again, a lot of attention to this conflict. Trump said he would invoke the Insurrection Act if Minnesota politicians don't obey the law. Thousands of ICE and Border Patrol personnel have been sent to Minnesota with tear gas and pepper spray used in confrontations with protesters. And so President Trump said on Tuesday, or said the other day on Truth Social, that he would invoke the Insurrection Act if Minnesota politicians didn't obey the law. And the Insurrection Act is a rarely used 1807 law, gives the president the authority to deploy the military domestically without prior congressional approval. And the Department of Homeland Security said federal officers shot a Venezuelan man in the leg in Minneapolis last night, alleging the man fled after a traffic stop and attacked the officers. So one of the problems with this pushback is it emboldens those criminals they actually are looking to get. Listen, folks, the best thing to do is to provide oversight, recording. If you think something is done wrong, you can then report the officer and deal with it that way. Trying to confront them in the streets and doing all this is just a waste of time. It's a bad idea. And all it does is embolden the heavy-handed authoritarians, and it gives them legitimacy. Like this guy. This guy is a heavy-handed authoritarian, and all you're going to do is give these guys all the legitimacy that they are looking for. Okay, so this is why it's a foolish idea to contend this way. It's much better to just take them all up on charges the next day. Stephen Miller says Minnesota authorities ordered to stand down and surrender to federal officers as anti-ICE protesters intensify. And so this is, again, a power struggle between the states and the federal government. This will not end well. President Donald Trump's top aide, Stephen Miller, shockingly declared that local and state enforcement have been ordered to stand down and surrender as anti-ICE protests continue to grip the state. So do you think those are the kinds of words that bring peace, or do you think those are the kinds of words that are going to make every law enforcement, governor, sheriff in any state that they're coming in go, really? Really? Right? See, you know that they're doing it on purpose, because that's just common sense. Anybody knows that. We all know that. Any adult knows that. So then why are you doing that? Well, you're doing it because you want to fight. You're doing it because you want to fight. You're doing things that you know are going to provoke a response. All right. For example, you don't think this is going to provoke a response? Let me have your papers. You need to prepare to give me your papers. You don't think the Americans are going to respond to this? Christian Nguyen says people should be prepared to prove U.S. citizenship. Okay, again, it sounds good, but it depends on how you're doing this. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Noem advised reporters that immigration and customs enforcement officers may ask some Americans for proof of citizenship during enforcement operations. And that makes sense if you're at a border checkpoint or if you're at a certain place. It's another thing when you're just walking down the street, right? So it depends on how it's done. In every situation, we're doing targeted enforcement. So again, targeted enforcement at a border, at a checkpoint, where's the targeted enforcement? If the targeted enforcement is a downtown Minneapolis nightclub, that might present new levels of challenges, if you know what I'm trying to say, right? So this is why it's nuanced. And yeah, somebody says, does my gun permit count as my papers? I don't know. It's a good question. Does that count as my U.S. citizenship, right? And so again, I think that this is also a back channels trick to get people to say they're U.S. citizens, which also presents some other challenges that you guys might want to look into, right? So meanwhile, what we're seeing is the Chinese are ignoring all this, right? So other countries are not all up in arms over U.S. stuff. We are, but they aren't. They're moving ahead. And China says it's developing over 10 quantum warfare weapons. They're moving to a new level of warfare. People's Liberation Army says it's working on advanced technology to provide better frontline mapping. Oof, that's rough. China's military says it's using quantum technology to gather high-value military intelligence from public cyberspace. So they're using quantum to get hyper-fast information so fast that they can seem almost superhuman when they move. And this is part of the plan. So again, a lot of smoke and mirrors while real things are happening. And I think one of the real things that are happening right now is this Gaza plan. So we watched them absolutely pummel Gaza with bombs from one side to the other, turning it into just pure rubble. Okay, just rubble. And Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced the phase 2 of President Trump's Gaza peace plan has been begun, focusing on demilitarization, governmental transition, and reconstruction. So let's get the bulldozers in. Let's start building hotels. Phase 2 established a transitional, technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, and begins the full demilitarization and reconstruction of Gaza, primarily the disarmament of all unauthorized personnel, Witkoff announced on social media. The U.S. expects Hamas to comply fully with its obligations, including the immediate return of the final deceased hostage. Failure to do so will bring serious consequences. So they're down to the last hostage. This thing is winding down, and what are they kicking off? Their next plan. And the plan is move right into construction. And again, they figured out that no one's going to stop them. No one can stop them. So they're just going to go on and they'll just tell you whatever they think they can tell you to make it make sense. Now, they're running out of time to finance all these things. So, we got to grab what we can grab. And seeing as they're pirates anyway, they went ahead and decided to grab another military, grabbed another fugitive oil tanker linked to Venezuela. Some of this stuff is really sketchy, guys. Okay, Marines launched from U.S. General Ford board a U.S. tanker ahead of the President Donald Trump's meeting with Venezuela opposition leader and grabs this tanker. So this happened since our last report, and now they grabbed another one. And this is just cash money. They're able to sell this oil. When they seize it, they sell it. It's immediate cash. Now, reports are, haven't confirmed, but reports are that money is not going in U.S. government funding, but going to overseas accounts. So again, stay tuned. Stay tuned, because this is going to get dicey before it's over. And these operations are backed by the full power of the U.S. Navy's amphibious Ready Group, including the Ready and Lethal platforms of U.S. Iwo Jima and U.S. San Antonio and the U.S. Fort Lauderdale. So they're using military weaponry to hold these ships. And if any part of that ends up being a personal benefit to any one individual, that's going to be a major problem down the road. So we're all going to keep an eye on the story as it comes on, because it is indicative of where we're headed. Another thing that's very indicative of where we are, folks, and again, this is flat out telling you the change in the way in the world works, and it's affecting people on the ground. And again, as I talked about this and continue to talk about it, if you do not transition, if you do not understand the new world that you're moving into, you will be run over. Banks are right now seizing 367,000 homes as housing plan spreads across the U.S. is about to get much worse. Housing pain, I should say, is spreading across the United States. And the past year was a difficult one for homeowners, but experts warn that 2026 could be even more challenging. So watch this. Foreclosures: when a bank or lender takes back a home after missed mortgage payments rose 14% from a year earlier, which was already bad. So they're only comparing it to the year before, which was already a bad year, and it went 14% worse. And a total of 367,000 properties faced foreclosure filings in 2025, meaning they were in some stage of being taken over by a lender. And experts warn, so the banks are getting rich. I said the banks are getting rich. There's more homeless than ever, but the banks are getting rich. So the banks got plenty of houses. Just saying. That banking idea, that was a great idea. Don't you think, Hamilton? That was great. Experts warn more homes may be seized in 2026 as the job market weakens, and it may very well then we could, unfortunately, down the road see the increase of the foreclosure rate significantly accelerate. Yeah, because the more people you put out of homes, the more people you put out of jobs, the more people you put out of economy, the more it's going to ripple. And the people that think they're fine, the people that think it's not affecting me, it's only a matter of time before it does. I said it's only a matter of time. This baby's coming like a slow-moving train wreck, and it's going to affect everybody because it's poverty, and it's coming like an armed man for everybody who dishonored the Most High. I said it's coming like a curse for everybody who dishonored the Most High, who thought it was no big deal. Well, you're about to find out it's a big deal. Poverty sucks. Just saying. Poverty does not feel good. And it is really, really emasculating and very disempowering. You feel very weak. You feel very limited. You feel as if you are useless, especially if you're coming from wealth. So those that are going to be transitioning from a high economic position to a low one are going to really feel it. And it's going to be very dramatic. And I believe many are already experiencing that right now. Now, what a lot of people are doing is unplugging, which is a great idea, by the way. I hope more and more people start doing this. Young Americans are unplugging, and it's making them happier. It should. The problem with that is if you unplug too far, and you guys can look at the story on Remnant Watch. We're running out of time. But if you unplug too far, the problem with that is that you unplug from the world. This is one of the things that why we do this weekly news update, because people went too far. They were totally, completely disconnected, right? And then there are those that were overindulging. They're getting too many reports every day to the point where they're not productive at all. So again, we needed a moderation or a happy medium. And I think the same is true with this kind of thing. Yes, unplugging socially is a very good idea. But being disconnected from the digital economy, which runs the world, is not smart. You need to at least know what's going on digitally. You need to at least know what's happening in your world. And unfortunately, we're all going to fall further and further behind because the mechanisms of trade and communication have changed, i.e., right now, you're watching me on a digital platform. So it works for a lot of things in a very positive way. So remember not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's the ruach of these people. That's the problem. Put the same tools in the hands of Yahuwah's anointed, and you have different results. Okay? So you're starting to see major transitions in the way people are employed. And this is one of my points that I continue to make. Charlotte's biggest employer are already replacing some workers with AI. And it's already happening. A growing number of Charlotte's bank jobs are now being done by AI instead of people. So again, this is huge because this removes payroll. Why it matters: as the nation's number 2 banking center with tens of thousands of finance workers, Charlotte is vulnerable as the fears of a job apocalypse sparked by AI. And this is a very real fear because, frankly, AI shows up to work every day. Driving the news, Bank of America and Wells Fargo continue to tout efficiency gains while reporting earnings this week. They're finding they can cut expenses through investment in technology. So they're willing to spend money. This is who New Kingdom is. Our market is these level of customers. We don't market to the individual. Our technology is for big companies that are looking to cut costs, and they are huge. The amount of money they spend on AI, for example, is ridiculous, right? And so they're all in this trying to find ways to cut costs for personnel and trying to be more efficient. And it's very difficult in a tough economy, guys. So the more difficulty the economy goes through, then the more pressure there's going to be to turn to more profitable ways to do things. So this is not going to end. And this is important that we learn about the things that we're around. Again, we can be in the world and not of it, right? So we can know about how things work and not necessarily give all the way into it. It's one of the ways in which we have to function. We have to navigate. And I will give you many examples in the scripture. One of them would be Abraham himself, who had to deal with Abimelech and had to deal with the various sects and the various families, the daughters, Heth and his sons and all the various families that were there. So even though he was dedicated and set apart unto Yahuwah, unto the Most High, he still had to deal with the people in the land, right? So he still with them in trade. He had to deal with them in their commerce system. He had to work with whatever they had. The same is true with every biblical story that you read. So protesting or feeling like you've got to stand outside of it is actually not biblical. It doesn't comport with the biblical story. What is comporting with the biblical story is that it gives you barakah inside their system. In other words, he puts you in it, and they can't stop your blessing. Joseph is a great example. Daniel's another great example, and so forth. So what I believe the Most High wants to do is make you go into all the world, even the digital world, and preach the gospel. So even the digital world, right? They tried to make a digital world where they're going to exclude us. No, we're going to come and take over. Come on, somebody. Help me preach this thing. We're going to come and take over. But because of this rhetoric and because of the kinds of things that are happening, the entire international landscape is shifting. So everything that can be shaken is being shaken. One more time. Everything that can be shaken is being shaken. Here's another great example of that, because we take for granted the allies that we have. And one of the allies that we've taken for granted is Canada. And so Canada now is turning. Can you believe this? This is really hard to watch because, again, I don't think you can say there's more of an existential threat to the United States than China. And so to have its northern neighbor looking to do business and supporting China is really crazy to see, right? So Canada is turning to China as Trump's tariffs and threats bring foes together. Yes, this is what I was trying to tell you, is that it's almost as if it's intentional, because the more he does it, you got to know that it's backfiring. You got to know that all it's doing is bringing your enemies together, right? So this doesn't make any sense unless he's got some other purpose that we don't see. But I do believe that a lot of this is meant to be smokescreen, so we don't watch too closely what's going on in Gaza. Prime Minister Mark Carney hailed the new strategic partnership in Beijing on Friday that included a break with the United States on tariffs. And so he's breaking from that. The U.S. ties with their lowest point in modern history. Canada is turning to one of its only countries with which it had even worth relations, China. And Canada is forging a new strategic partnership with China, its second biggest trading partner, Prime Minister Mark Carney said Friday during what he called historic trip to Beijing. And what's going on is, of course, the United States is playing hardball with China. Venezuela is part of that hardball. Some of their other tariff and trade partner policies are part of that. And what the United States was hoping was that other countries would get on board and put pressure on China and get China to play U.S. ball. That backfired. And so now many outlets and rumor mills are reporting that it's actually going the other way. So the United States is ending up more isolated and ending up in sort of the worst of the two scenarios that it had anticipated. I think this does not bode well for the future. And it's something that we should all be concerned about here in the U.S. So redouble your efforts in prayer for wisdom to start coming in to the area that you live. And, of course, be part of the remnant. Be part of the solution going on in the earth today. Because, after all, we don't tread down the wicked by getting bigger boots. We tread down the wicked by having more wisdom, by walking in the light of the good news, by demonstration of great and good works that give kavod to our Father in heaven. Well, that's it for today. I pray this broadcast has been a barakah to you. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for us to get together with those so greatly loved. Thank you again for joining us. Shalom.